Well, it's the top of the hour. We can go ahead and get started. My name is Shawn Frasier. I'm with Pinnacle Health Informatics. And today we're going to talk a little bit in our webinar series that we're doing with Power BI. We're going to talk a little bit about geocoding and visualizing some of that type of data in Power BI and give kind of an introduction to that. Some of you have probably done this before. There is some built-in geocoding capabilities in Power BI. We have typically liked to use the Google Geocode API, and so we can do thousands of addresses at a time, and we're not limited by any sort of limitation on how many that we can look up real time through the Power BI service. That's a free service, but you have to have an account. And you can literally do thousands per hour. They do have some that cost money, but the basic geocoding API is free. And we have some processes they're kind of intense SQL processes that build those address to geocode latitude, longitude tables, and we'll send those out. We'll have those available on our website. We'll send out a link to those, so you can see how we've built those if you're interested in those. And they're usually very pretty easy to modify to your application. So if you're interested in geocoding, that's a great way to get involved, is to sign up for the Google Geocode API and start to do some testing with that. So today what I wanted to look at is we'll jump right into Power BI. Now, we had a little technical issue with my other data set. I was going to actually do a live data set that I had transferred, but the system that I wanted to show had a little bit of an issue. And so we're going to skip that. We'll do that on the next one. We're going to use a little bit different data set today, but it'll kind of still show the basic functionality. So what I want to do first is I've opened my Power BI and I want to go to get data. And today we're just going to use a simple CSV file. Now we can use it from any of the connectors that are available. We like to use analysis services a lot. That's just a great way to surface data, or directly from SQL Server. So normally we would have all of that geocode data in SQL Server. So you'd have that extreme size and speed capability. Today we're just going to quickly use a CSV file that I've downloaded, and we're going to go get this, and we're going to go look at Sacramento crime data from 2006. So I've just clicked on that CSV file. I'm going to open that up, and you can see in Power BI that it gives us a nice way to look at that data before we import it. And you can see here we have our date time, we have our address, we have district, we have the police beat. Their neighborhoods are segregated into grids or organized into grids. There's a crime description. There's a UCR, the National Crime Incident Database has a code as well. And then there's a latitude and longitude. So typically on this kind of a call, we'd have service data, health service. So for example, recently we had a situation where a client wanted to look at all of their behavioral health care services by latitude and longitude as to where the clients lived, and see how they're being served and if there's anything they can do to improve service to certain areas. So that's a great way to do it and make sure that your areas are all being served that you need to be able to access. And so that's a great way to do that, and it's very useful. But this is just generic crime data. This is a data set anyone can get, and it just kind of illustrates some of the things that you can do with the geospatial data to get this latitude and longitude back. And that's really the trick, is getting that latitude and longitude, and that's what the Google API is for. So so you get your data in here into Power BI, and you can take a look at it. And if you want to transform the data, you can do that, and you can take a look at it and get it ready to go. We're just going to go ahead and load that data up. And it's loading this data into Power BI. Okay, excellent. So you can see here we have our various Power BI panes here. We have our filters, our visualizations, and our fields. And we can start working with that data. So I'm going to grab a map visual here. Okay. And this is the Bing map visual. And again, Power BI is really interactive, really nice. You have to kind of pay close attention to what's selected at any given time on the screen, because if you pick outside that and you pick something, a different visual will appear. So you always want to just make sure you're staying focused on the visual that you're looking at, that you're interested in. So that's our Bing map visual. We'll drag that in. And we have our information over here on the right. You can see that's the information that we looked at. We looked at a little bit ago as we imported it. We can see we have address and beat and year and quarter and day and description and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and bring some data in here, and we'll see how we can start to look at this. So let's go to, let's start dragging some of these things in here that'll give us some information. So we can bring in latitude, drop it in the latitude box, drop it in the longitude box. And we're going to see here we've got crime data for 2006. See that? See how quickly it starts to put that data together. You can see on our tooltip, we have that latitude and longitude. Now, if we zoom in, it's nice with the Bing map layer, because we can start to see some details here. We can start to see a little bit more about it. Well, that's interesting. What if I want to see just a particular month? Well, the nice thing is that when we put these into Power BI, you'll always usually have, or it's a good idea to have, a nice date hierarchy. And so you can see this here. This is organized into year, quarter, and month of 2006. So we could say, hey, we want to look at just a certain month. So we're going to drag that into our filters view. And let's say, what's a good month to look at? Maybe June, good warm month. And we'll see if this comes back with some data. Oh, there was no crime in June. Maybe that wasn't a good month. Let's see. How about we go April? Well, maybe that's not linked in there. Maybe that won't give us what we need. Let's maybe quarter would be better. Let's try quarter. Let's see the second quarter. Oh, they're obviously not keeping date by quarter, so we'll leave that off for right now. We'll just leave it wide open, and we'll zoom in to get a little bit better view of the crime distribution. So you can kind of see how nice that is. Now, what if I want to see more on these tooltips? I can do tooltips here, but I want to see a little bit more what's going on. And I have a tooltip field here. And how about we do crime description? And we'll see here as we zoom back in. Okay, there we go. So you've got your crime description in there now. Okay. You can see that. Now we can add more to those tooltips. We can put the address in there. We can put the beat. We can put the district. We can put the month. That'll give us a little bit more information. Now when we zoom back in, so this was April. Mouse over that. We have the address. We have the description and the month. And you can see how nicely you can do that in the Power BI visual. Now we can also affect the legend here. So if we want, that's the tooltip, but we also can put things in the legend. So let's see if we can put the crime description in the legend. Okay, now you can see the different colors are meaningful. And you can look at this data. And you can see there's so much different data. Now, we'd probably, what we'd want to do is filter this and then have a pick list or something. So we could do that. We could say, you know what, we just want to, let's do this a little bit differently. Let's take that out of the legend, the crime description, and let's build a filter. Now remember, we have to be off this, and we want to put a slicer on it. So we're going to put a slicer, and then we want the description in that slicer. Okay, so let's do that. Put that over a little bit. So you can see we could do services. So on a project that we just looked at, we can say, oh, you know, there was a need to break that out by services. So you could easily do this for services. Now you could also have a measure in there for the number of services, and we could grow the size of that, the size of the marker to give us the number. So, you know, we're gonna look at our filter here, and I've picked here just by chance, it's 28.5 grams of a substance. And if you pick something else, you see that there's only a couple of crimes. You can filter on the different crimes. Let's see what some big ones. Vehicle tampering, not too many. You can kind of see how you can filter this, and it'll zoom in on that map layer for you. You can also hold down the control key, and you can do multiple. Now, if we put the legend back, then we can see what that crime description is by color, right? Now we have a little bit of a color coordination going on there. So very nice. And there's our mouse overs work. And we can zoom in on this. Now we're down at the latitude and longitude level, which is a very, very granular. We could also do like zip code, right? We could do zip code, and that way you could see more of kind of a quantity applied to an area. But this gets us right down to an exact latitude and longitude for a location. Now, one thing that's nice too is with the Google API services, you can compare it to an address, and so you can say how far is this address that we're looking for from a reference address. So you could put in your clinic locations, and then you could kind of look at things. You know, how far do clients need to drive to get to one of our clinics, you know, and is there any correlation between the number of services and the amount that they have to drive? You know, do we need to open a new clinic because we have a lot of services and people are driving a long way from those places? So, I mean, you can see that that's, you know, that would be useful in some way. So, any questions from anybody in the group? Any thoughts about how this might be useful? Anybody have any experience with geocoding in the past? Excellent. Anybody have any ideas how this might be useful for behavioral health care? Okay. Let's see, I can kind of go through that process again. We can look at the data a little bit differently. I can open another page here. And we can do that same thing. So we do that same thing. We can get the data. We can go out to our CSV, get the crime data, pull that in. Now we could transform this data as well. So that's one thing I didn't do. I just loaded the raw data. So if you wanted a smaller data set, you could certainly come in here and you could filter your data set before. You could remove columns. You could put formulas in. If you use the DAX query language, you can come in here and you can modify all the aspects. There's also some very interesting things that are built in to the Power BI functions. You can come in here and you can look at the relationships between the tables. Right now we just have one table, but you could bring in additional tables. You can modify the data further, and you can create new measures, right? We could create a measure. So for example, we could say, we could put a measure in here that is like, let's do measure, let's do crime count. Count equals, I think it's count rows. And then our table name is Sacramento Crime 2006. And that's now going to give us a nice count. So before we didn't really have a count of the number of crimes. And we can maybe look at this not quite so granularly as by latitude and longitude. We can look at it by maybe by beat, police beat, for example. So this is just an example of a DAX query, and that's kind of the language that they want you to use when you're building these, when they're building your visualizations in Power BI. It's that data analysis expressions, I think it's what it's called. So we can build a count in here, and we can apply that change. And now it appears over here in my field list. So we can go to another report here, and let's do another map. Let's pull this in, and let's do crime count by beat. Let's see. We may need to do latitude and longitude. Let's see if we can, because we don't have zip code in here. That's actually, they don't have that in here, but let's go back to latitude and longitude. And then we can, you can kind of see based on the size of our little bubble here, we zoom in where the crime is happening a little bit more effectively. And then we could also bring the crime description down to our tooltip, and we can see what's our large one there based on the size here. That a lot of hit and runs there at that location. You might want to avoid that, right? Or you may want to apply some training, or I don't know, better traffic control. Who knows? You kind of start to see. It inserted our crime count into the size of the ball of the point. So if we put the crime count in the legend, you can start to get a go put our crime count in the legend. Our crime description in the legend. Let's do that. And you can start seeing kind of the breakout of each one of those. You can see here, as you put on those, as you mouse over those different visuals, you can see. So it's really powerful data exploration. So what would be great to do, and maybe we'll do this on our next session, is we'll actually look at behavioral health data, and we can look at this by zip code and maybe get some sample data put together, and you can kind of see how things break out. This is a great way. You can see how this is a great way for data exploration and see how things are shaping up at your agency service-wise. Any questions or any comments or any thoughts about this, if this might be useful? Okay. Well, you can see very quickly that this can be a very useful tool, and it's very interactive. The Power BI is very interactive, and you can really do a lot of data exploration. Let's see, we have a question. So yes, we have an anonymous attendee, and it says, what were you using to calculate the distances? So yes, so in the Google API, you can put in a reference address and then compare it. So if you wanted to put, say, a reference address from a main clinic, you can put that in, and then it will give you how far that is. And I think it'll do it in meters or feet or miles or something like that. And so you can, you can utilize that to do that. And you could put in, you could change colors by distance. So you could say, who's the furthest from the clinic, and there's a lot of questions here, right? In my mind, it would be a way to make sure you're getting, you're building clinics or putting clinics in the right areas to serve your population. So, well, good. Any other questions? That's kind of the extent that I have today. We're a little bit short. I did have a little technical issue with the other system, but I did want to get in here and give you a flavor of this. And I can send out this data set. It's a very easy data set to get started with. You can download Power BI for free. I'll also send out or post on our website. We'll send out the link to the API information and how you can get that up and running on your own system. So very good. Well, I appreciate everyone taking a few minutes today. It's been a little bit shorter, but I did want to meet and kind of show this and kind of take it to the next level and kind of see if I could get some ideas. Let's see. Oh, there's some other questions. Can you calculate points of centrality? I'm not sure what that means, but I think so. Maybe you could explain that. We could use this for methadone. Yep, absolutely. Yep, excellent. Yeah, those are all excellent. It would be great if anyone has any ideas of things you want to try. If you just have some questions, you want to try to do it yourself, I'm happy to answer any questions. Or if you want to collaborate on it, would be great too. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up if there's no other questions. If anything does come up, please feel free to get a hold of us, and we can assist you in any way possible. But it's been great, and we'll send out some further information, and hopefully we'll see you on future webinars. I appreciate everyone's attendance. Thank you, everyone.